So we're going to go ahead and get started. Hello and welcome to SLA Europe's Wednesday webinar. We're the SLA Europe events team and we're happy that you're joining with us today. So we have two talks for you this evening. The first, Impact Measurement in Special Libraries with Kristīne Pabērza, and the second, a new language for talking about library value with Christian Lauersen. They'll each speak for about 20 minutes, and then we'll have 10 to 15 minutes for questions. So before we get started, I'd first like to invite our speakers to introduce themselves. Please tell us who you are, where you're located, and the work you do. Kristīne?
Yes, hello. Hello from The Hague in the Netherlands. My name is Kristīne Pabērza-Ramiresa. So in January will be 5 years since I work at IFLA. I'm a member engagement officer, but I do many things starting from, I'm in charge for the library map of the world, if you've heard about that project. But I also do a lot of data and statistics to support our internal work. I'm a librarian by background. I hold master degree in librarianship and I never finished my PhD thesis because I got so excited about evaluation and had a possibility to actually work in a position of impact assessment specialist for many years in Latvia. So I come from Latvia and yeah, I'm passionate about evaluation, and today I will talk a little bit about my own experience and things that helped me in my work as I was learning about impact evaluation, measurement, assessment. These all are the same, and I hope that some of it will be useful for you.
Great, thank you. Christian?
Hi, everybody. Thank you for inviting me. Looking forward to this tonight. My name is Christian. I'm based in Copenhagen. I actually am in my bedroom right now because the rest of the department is filled with people. So welcome to my bedroom. I'm director of libraries and citizen services in Roskilde municipality. That's around 30 miles outside of Copenhagen. I'm a trained librarian from 2007 and used the first 10 years of my career of working with academic libraries, with the Royal Library in Copenhagen. But then 3 years ago, I wanted to try something else out. And there was this amazing position in Roskilde, which is a place where you, in many ways, find that culture is not only the cream on top of the cake, but actually means something for people and communities. And I've been working a lot about and thinking a lot about how we can talk about that in a manner. We live in a society where numbers and things you can actually feel and measure is a big driver, but on cultural activities, and so about libraries, it's hard to measure that impact and value. So we've been working a lot with that, and I'm looking forward to talking to that about this tonight.
Great, thank you.
Great. Well, when you invited me to speak at this event, I was thinking about like what I can tell in 20 minutes about 20 years of experience that I have. And I feel like impact evaluation is not something like that you can tell everything, you know, in 20 minutes. And that's why I thought I will focus on some of the things that I've been struggling myself when I started first, and some of the things that I still observe while working with the library map of the world and our contributors around the world. So first thing I have to mention is that I don't have much experience with special libraries, but I have a little. I have been working in different types of libraries since 2009. And for about 2 years, I was a news librarian in a newspaper. So I know a little bit about how work in special libraries is a little bit different from other libraries. But the most of my working life I spent working in or for public libraries. So, but I think the things that I will be talking about are relevant, and let's yeah, dig into it. So the first thing is that is all about why we are doing this. And one of the outcomes from IFLA's Global Vision in 2018 was that one of the challenges or the opportunities that we have to, out of 10 was related to ensuring that our stakeholders understand our value and impact. And it is not that we haven't done it, but in my opinion, there are some things where we can improve. And in many cases, all the time, we have been doing some things, I don't want to say wrong, but there are places for improvement. So, and for me, a lot of it is about how we talk about things and how we talk about our value and impact. But to talk about it, we first need to understand what it is and how to actually go about it. And in preparations for this this talk, I actually looked at the article, which is quite old. It is from 2013 and was very helpful for me when I was doing impact assessment in Latvia and planning for it. And the quote that you see on the screen comes from that article, which says that the libraries are in the relationship business, and that it's relationships with our users and stakeholders that really help us to fulfill the purpose of positively impacting people's lives. So for me, the first thing is that mindset change that needed to happen in myself when to really refocus from libraries to communities and to think more about the user perspective and the stakeholder perspective. And now I'll walk you through the things that that helped me to do this, but also which are mentioned in the article itself. And it's amazing, but also it's a little bit sad that still almost 10 years after these ideas were written by the authors, that we still deal with the same things. And these are the things that I notice from my work with our contributors working on library stories, the SDG stories, where we want to show the impact that libraries have on the sustainable development. So the first thing really is about defining what the target is and what is the thing that we want to achieve, and what are those meaningful measures. And the key word, in this is meaningful. And I think the first thing is to think what the meaningful means and what these targets are. So we do things to achieve some value, right? And sometimes in personal lives, we are better in that than in our professional lives. Let's give you just an example how to think about it from the personal life. So, like, for example, for me during pandemic is one of the personal, let's say, problems or the needs is that I gained weight, because we don't walk, I don't cycle 20 kilometers a day as I did, and I gained it. And my target is to lose the weight. But the thing is that the target is not how many kilos I want to lose or something like that, but I would think that I want to feel healthier. I want to be able to wear the clothes that I have in my closet, which do not fit me, and I want to have a better life. So the thing is to think beyond that. And in the library settings, like you would think, what is it what is this impact that you want to have from your services and programs on people's lives, on users, and what influence do you want to have on your stakeholders or your decision makers and things like that. And for me, and I'm a big fan of this, I imagine you saw many other versions of this logic model. And for me, why logic model is useful, has been useful, and still is because it really is logical. And the promise is that that anything that you will do in your library will eventually lead to outcomes and impact, even if you will not plan for that. And to put it all in a bigger context, for me, what was useful was to actually not start with inputs, but start with the needs, or the conditions, or the context, or the problem. And when that problem is in the beginning, then it's more meaningful. To put activities between inputs and outputs was helpful for me for planning purposes, because then the whole life cycle of all of this comes together. But what was not useful for me is that there are many visual representations of the logic model, which would be like line like this. You might have seen triangulars where the needs would be in the bottom, and then the impact on top of the triangular. But I found that it is easier for me to think about the logic model as a cycle, as this round cycle which never ends, which starts with needs and goes around, and we achieve something, and we look again at the situation. What is it that we want to, where we are, what is it that we want to improve again? And it's just becomes the cycle of our work. Okay. So the next thing is, and I think the reason for why we sometimes cannot so well articulate our value and impact to our stakeholders, or why we have a feeling that they don't hear us, is that we might not know what is meaningful for them. And as a result, we don't really talk the language that our decision makers would understand. Okay, so the first thing is here to start really to think what the stakeholders are, and who are the people who take decisions about the funding, investments in libraries. Is there a council or a board? Not only like a group, but who are those individuals? And if you don't know that, then you should explore that, and also not to wait until the budget time, but to start that conversation and have it ongoing, to learn about what the goals are, what is important for them, and how they perceive what the success is, and then how would they measure the value and the impact. So that's another thing. So in my opinion, then the next problem, which also we can observe, is that the outcomes, those targets, and the impact is not defined anywhere in the design of our new project or a design of new service. And the thing is that the most of the time we would spend in thinking about how we will do things. We'll get a funding, but we'll spend it what are we going to do, when, and who will do it. But instead of spending time on really thinking what the value is, why we are investing in this service, what is it that we want to come out of it, what impact we want for our users, and yeah, so those questions. So it is just about the changing that perspective to start thinking in the first place about the why and about what we want to achieve as the result, and what the success would look like, and then the how might change after that. So it's not that we don't have to think about how, but we have to put the why and the what in the first place. And then the biggest problem that I observe also in my daily work, and it's been also a challenge for me when I started with impact evaluation. I've attended also courses and when I was a student, there was no subject close to measuring impact or understanding what's the difference between impact and statistics and things like that. So, and it prevails that we confuse what I would say outputs and outcomes, or operational and satisfaction measures with what the value measures are. So we collect a lot of statistics, the visitation, the participation, the engagement statistics and numbers, the loans, everything. And then there are sometimes cases when we ask more than that. We ask, did you like, how did you like this or that in our offer? But the satisfaction doesn't give us any information about what happened next. How did we influence the users' lives? And something that helped me, and this can also be discussed, and of course it's not like the lines can go somewhere else probably, but this division of that logic model into these areas of perspective helped also me to better understand how to communicate that impact, not only how to measure that, but how to communicate. So, and in some of the models, logic models, you would see that the outcomes and impact are like combined or one. But for me, it's important to actually make that division between outcomes and impact, because the outcomes would be the user's perspective. Like, for example, if you had a I don't know, just a simple example. If a library had a training on how to write a CV or improve some job-related skills, then the skills improvement in skills and abilities and attitudes might be the outcome for user, but the same outcomes would be the impact for stakeholders. It would just be defined differently. Stakeholders would see it like a reduction in unemployment rates, for example. So, and that connection with needs is also helpful, because those needs are the needs that our stakeholders have. It's not only the needs of the users, but they would be also the problems that our stakeholders deal with. And if we can combine that impact back to what the need is, that would help us to tell a story better. So, and in the bottom, so then everything that is inputs, activities, or outputs, these are the operational measures, or our library perspective. That of course this data is also super useful, but it will be more useful in management and of the library than for demonstrating the value and impact. Of course, it can be combined, but it's a different story then. And the last thing which I want to mention among those challenges, I think, is that sometimes, well, not sometimes, it happens in many cases when we have a nice plan and we know what we want to achieve, we defined what the success would look like, but then there is no one responsible for managing these library measures. And I would say that this is all about not only measuring it, but it's more like impact management. So I was very lucky, and it happened in my life that I had a position which is called impact assessment specialist. But and I think in our lifetime, there won't be many libraries having a position like that. But there should be someone who has a role and who has a responsibility of then have like implementing the action plan of actually making the impact study and collecting this data, but also then evaluating the trends and communicating this all to stakeholders. So that's about it. So I think in conclusion, I can say that that is not about thinking. So the main thing here is planning. And I think that if we have a good plan, which really needs to be explicitly written, then it becomes concrete, and it will definitely lead to success. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Kristīne. Thank you. If you have questions for Kristīne about anything she spoke about, please feel free to type your questions into the chat or into the question and answer box, and we'll come back to those at the end of the session.
All good. Thank you. All right. I'd like to start out with a personal story. When I was 17 years old, I lived in a small town in Jutland in Denmark called Hornslet with my parents and my little brother. And I went to gymnasium. And my way of embracing the world was framed by one yearly trip with my parents to some beach in Southern Europe, where we lay on the beach and bathed in the water and ate a lot of French fries. And then sometimes, occasionally, I went to the biggest city around, which was Aarhus, which is the second biggest city in Denmark. And then one day, I bought a book at the local public library in Hornslet called "I Have Seen the World Begin" by a Danish author called Carsten Jensen. This is the book, and I read it quite fast. It's about Carsten Jensen, who is traveling as a young man to the southern part of the world. He's traveling over the Trans-Siberia Railroad on to the eastern part of our world, and experience a lot of different things and have different reflection about that. And it's an amazing book, and it was like being hit with a baseball bat in my head, and also getting a big hug, and also, I don't know, getting wings and fly to distant shores, and something just light up inside me. And it was something about adventure and wanting to travel to see something else than Hornslet. And right after gymnasium, I had earned some money. I went traveling, and I went traveling for the 3 next years. So that was a book bought at a library. And I would not say that it changed my life, but it did something to this young man in Hornslet. And it had some impact on me from the action that I put into it that has reflected me throughout my life. So you could say that this was Carsten Jensen writing the books. It was not the public library. But then again, I was 17 years old. I had no money, and I'm pretty sure I wouldn't buy the book myself. And it was on a display about traveling, so it caught my eye. I thought the title was amazing, and so the library promoted it to me. And that is a way to talk about a book and the impact and the library and the value that it brings to an individual. But is that the way that we talk about libraries in general? I don't think so. And I made a small investigation on how we talk about libraries, at least in Danish context. This is a general big story about libraries. Library footfall down 80% on last year. It's stories about key figures, stories about the usage of libraries. This is another one, coronavirus, libraries see surge in ebook borrowing during lockdown. How many books do people borrow? How many downloads is there? How many visits do we have in our libraries? Lots of headlines, lots of story, very small, deep stories into what's behind the numbers. Do they go up? It's good. Do they go down? It's not so good. And we got some sort of crisis. The book got a crisis, library got a crisis. Then there's another kind of voice about libraries. Do we really need it? Council leader question library service after months of closure. That is politicians, decision makers, people of culture, library professional, individuals that mean something about libraries and their place in societies that go into public and say something about it, debate it. Basically, it's fantastic. It would be devastating for libraries in general if it was not debated. First of all, it's a sign of that we are important and we matter to somebody, both negative and positive, but also the debate makes development. It makes us sharp. If something somebody writes something bad about us, it's our obligation to take that into account and say, no, you're wrong because so and so. So basically, it's a good thing. But what really is missing with those two is the user, the citizens, the society. The only reason that we have public libraries or libraries in general in our societies. This is a quote from a 13-year-old boy in our investigation, our survey, who says about his reason to come to the library: I come by here to check whether anyone I know is around. I come here every day instead of going home to an empty house. If we say that this boy has visiting his library, he says every day, I don't think he has been there every day, but maybe 150 times a year. It says 150 in the statistics, but it doesn't say what it means to him. It doesn't express that feeling of going into a library, going into feeling something, belonging to something, instead of going home to an empty house. You can't see that from the figures. And that is our primary aim about this investigation. Not to say that statistics doesn't mean anything, because it means a lot. It's very important for us. But basically, it says something about use of library and not necessarily something about the value of libraries. And we thought about this, that we need a new language for the value of libraries and what it means to citizens and society. And that's our main aim about our investigation of the impact of value of public libraries in Denmark. Not to find the truth about the impact of libraries, but I don't think that can be done, but to raise some awareness and give some methods about how to talk about impact and how to work with tracking the impact and the value beyond the numbers that we all know. A little bit about the method and design, because I think that it's important to understand the main result, which I will present shortly afterwards. We find our main inspiration from a British study called the Cultural Value Project from 2016. And their main aim is that we often, when we talk about and when we survey and study cultural impact, go directly from culture to how it affects something. It could be that you have art in urban spaces and it's good for tourism. Or you have theater outside and it's good for urban life and communities. But what really missing in many impact studies is the individual. It's the citizens, it's you and me. It's the people who meet a movie, a picture, a piece of music, reads a book at a library, meets a librarian. That situation is not described. There's nothing about it basically anywhere. It's going from culture in general to whatever it affects in a larger scale. So we thought that was really interesting, taking the individual into account when it comes to cultural impact. And so we built our scaffold for this new language about the results that the study shows. The full name of the study is Understanding the Value and Impacts of Cultural Experience. It's an amazing work. I really encourage you to read it at some point. What it says is that it's kind of a meta study. It's a study of 50 different studies of cultural impact. And what they found across all 50 studies on cultural impact is that when we meet impact and when we meet culture as an individual, it affects us in 4 dimensions, in 4 different ways. The first is emotional. We could say that me and Megan would go see a movie, and maybe it's a movie about being in the middle of life and drinking too much. When you see a movie, it brings out emotions in us. It awakens feelings, it awakens thoughts. I'm in the middle of my life, I'm 42, and I could be thinking, wow, what time goes so fast? What do I want with my life? Then it brings out some intellectual. It creates conversations and reflections. It could be reflection about alcohol, our own relationship with alcohol, our kids' relationship with alcohol, our society's relationship with alcohol. And we talk about that. Then it could be creative. It can inspire and motivate us to create something. It could be going to a concert and seeing some guy or girl playing ukulele and thinking, wow, that is an amazing little instrument. I want to try out that. I see a painting at a museum and thinking, wow, that is stunning. I want to take up painting myself. Read a book and want to experience, like traveling, that what was in the book, or maybe start up writing yourself. And then there's a huge social dimension in our meeting with culture. I'm pretty sure that if me and Megan went to see a movie, we would go out and see and go for a beer or a coffee afterwards and talk about this movie. Or we will go to work the after day and we will stand in the canteen and have a cup of coffee, and we will talk to co-workers and colleagues about that movie. Have you seen the movie? I've seen the movie. I think it's good. It's good. It made me think about. So there's a huge social dimension of culture. It brings us together. It's something that we do together, and it's something that we share. So our aim was to start with the individual experience and then build out from there. The data in the study is both quantitative and qualitative. It's a national survey in Denmark, going both female and males from 16 to 90, both users and non-users of public libraries, a huge survey on that, and then built around these 4 dimensions of cultural impact. And then it was qualitative 40 observation studies and interviews on various type of libraries, bigger library and a smaller branch library. Then it was important for us to think about what could we talk to the citizens about when it comes to a library. A library, a public library nowadays, is many things. It's collaboration with schools and museums. It's events out in urban spaces outside the library and all kinds of different things. But we didn't thought that we could go out and talk to regular citizens about everything. So we narrowed it down to these 4 core things, which basically is the traditional library. It's the collection. We talk to them about how do you feel about the collection? What is your relationship with the collection? What does it mean to you, both physical and digital? The library programs, workshops, art force, and all these kind of things. Physical facilities, study spaces, the library cafe, the shelves, and whatever. And then, very importantly, guidance from staff. We think that was very underrated in studies and not very much debated at all. What does it mean to get help from staff at a library? When do we ever talk about that in the public? So that is, that is the traditional library, but we were pretty calm about that because we thought that this was making it, I would say, we would be more sure that we would get valid results because we would talk to people about something that was familiar to them. And if the method was quite successful, we could always build on and move on to different aspects of the public library. So to the main results, to the public of Denmark, the public library is a haven in everyday life where citizens find room for contemplation and take time for themselves and each other. It should be understood in this way that many of us has a private life at home, somebody has a family, somebody lives alone, and so on. And then we have something else. Many people have a work, maybe it's a study or something. In between that, the public library for many citizens in Denmark acts as a haven where you can come and where they're not at home. There's kids, maybe there's dishwashing, there's all kind of things that relates to that space. At work, there's emails to be answered, there's meetings and stuff like this. This is a free space in the middle of it where you can just be yourself. There's nobody asking you what to do there. You can do whatever you want, and it's a world of knowledge, and it's a world of free and equal access to knowledge and cultural activity, and nobody asks you when to leave, and that is important to people. It's a haven in between. It's a little bit different how they use it. Somebody use it as just coming by their own to just relax, sit and read a book, a newspaper, go to a program, and other come with their family. Then to the citizens in Denmark, the public library is a credible communicator of knowledge and gives citizens enlightenment and a critical perspective on life. I find that to be extremely interesting finding in 2021, where echo chambers, fake news, misinformation is very, very high on the agenda. The citizens of Denmark says that the public library is an institution where what you meet of knowledge, learning, programs, books, staff is credible, trustful, and it gives them a critical perspective of life. It's actually the Enlightenment era all over again, just in a new shape. Very important finding to me. Then there's a finding about community. The public library is a place where citizens experience togetherness, either alone or with others, and where they experience that materials and the facilities that are the library are common property without financial barriers. I always thought that public libraries and libraries in general was fostering community, but it was new to me that many citizens find that the very fact that we have shared public spaces like libraries was fostering a feeling of commonness and togetherness. It's not the municipality books or libraries or staff, it's our books, it's our places, it's something that we share. And 85% of the parents in the survey says that it's important that the kids grow up in a community where there is libraries and shared property, because it's important to be that kind of people, the kind of person that cherish that there is something in society that we share and take care of together. Then there is a finding that goes about creativity, and the public library is a source of inspiration, stimulates imagination, and help motivate citizens to try out new things. It shouldn't be understand the way that you learn everything at the library. It should be understand the way that you might go to a program about fishing or read a book about fishing, and you want to, wow, go out to the nature, learn to fish, and just stand there, maybe with a buddy or your family, and try to fish. That could be cool. So you don't learn to fish at the library, but you get inspired. You want to try out something new. And that is, I mean, in communities, fostering a willingness to learn new stuff is extremely valuable and important. Then two more things. One thing around the staff, which I find, you know, extremely interesting to dive into. What does it mean to meet library workers? What does their position mean to communities and to people? And it says in Danish context that help from staff at public libraries holds significant impact. The staff is like the human face of the library and serves for many, especially in smaller branch libraries, as a relational point of reference in the local community. And then it also says that the citizens are glad that they can get help in the municipality from somebody where you're not a number in a queue, and where you can ask like many things, but especially get help with reading and subjects. What should I read with my kids? My kid has just started to read. What should I read when he or she is interested in vampires? What should I read? Or subjects for students, or just general pleasure for adults. And I'm really glad about that, because I find that is one of our core jobs and something that we are really good at. And then the last thing that goes across the whole study, this is the overall findings. There's many findings in the study, but this is the 6 overall. The last one is a little bit connected with all of them, but especially with the one about the perspective. And it comes to that the public library is a place where you can trust what you see and hear. I find that to be extremely valuable and credit for us. I mean, look around the society and look about how we go about trust in general. I think we stand on a very strong platform with that finding that people says that we can trust. When we walk into these doors and when we read something that the libraries do, somebody who works there or borrow a book or a piece of information, find something in a database, we find it trustful, we trust it, and we want to use it in that way. That is extremely important. All right, this is basically, we finished this earlier this year in February or March, we released it. I've been doing tons of talks about it, but this is just the one thing, you know, a report is just, sometimes it becomes a piece of paper or pieces of paper, and people forget about it. That's the nature of reports and studies, and that's just fine. But we really wanted to change the language, at least in Danish context, of how we talk about libraries. And so there was just step one. Another step was to release the design. So we released the total design of how we studied this and how we used it for others to use. So there's a complete user's guide to the impact compass, which we have been used to dive into the different aspect of the public library. And the meaning by this is that others can take it and use it. They can use it one-to-one. They could use it in smaller scale. It would be totally fine to use it on 10 or 15 citizens to go into maybe the digital library or a shared reading session for kids or something like that. And our thought is that it's the shared amount of surveys, of studies, of small and bigs that slowly will change the language. But because this work will not change this alone, I'm sure about that. It's been translated into English also, of course. And then we have been doing a lot of other kind of work. There's an obvious and big political arena about this. So I've been out talking to politicians locally, and I know others has been doing the same. And my politicians in Roskilde are great. They really love libraries and care deeply about them. But many of our talks is either on specific subjects, or it's also about the numbers. They also care about the numbers. They're glad when they go up. They're a bit sad and ask questions when they go down. When I presented this, it gave fuel to a whole different political conversation. Suddenly we were talking about how the public library could be an answer to some of the problems that we got with loneliness amongst young people in Roskilde municipality. That discussion has never taken place. So it gave spark to totally different political reflections and actions to actually not look at numbers, but look at what impact does the library have to people. Then there is, of course, library and cultural professionals. I've been doing a lot of talks, both because I think when you do something that you care about, you should share it if you want others to care about it, but also because I hope that others would reflect on this and adopt some of the logic and maybe not do the same, but get inspired to do different kind of impact and value studies, also in smaller scales. Then there's an interesting angle on the workplace. You know, in Roskilde, we are also talking about the numbers. If we have a program and I meet a librarian the next day and say, how did it go? And he or she would say, it was fantastic. There was 50 people sold out. It was great. She would say, no, damn, that was only 15 people. I don't know what went wrong. Maybe it was timing and the communication or something like that. But is that right, really? It says something about how relevant it was, but it doesn't say something about the impact it has. It could be that the 50 people had a bad experience, or we didn't get that out from it that was our intention. Or it could actually have changed the life of 55 out of the 15 people that came. So we use it internally to be sharpened in our conversation about how we do things and why they matters to people. And then, of course, there's a lot of in the media. We have been out and talking and in radio and all these kind of things. It's been a lot of fun. It's also to be getting this out to actually normal Danish people or international people abroad from Denmark. Last point for me today is that this is very important to the result of this. The findings is interesting enough in themselves. Maybe the method is also interesting, but they are only really interesting if we put them in context of society. If we talk about loneliness or mental health issues around citizens, then it could be relevant that we have a result, and not only ourselves saying it, but the citizens say that the public library to them is a haven where you can find perspective on life and where you can feel community. Or if we talk a problem about fake news and misinformation and echo chambers on social media, it could be relevant to talk about how can the public library be an answer into that when the citizens feel that this is a trustful institution with trustful context. So a general and very important point for me is that the report might be interesting in itself, but the results and every result of impact and value should be discussed and used in the context of the local society or the broader society that we are in. Thank you for listening.
Thank you, Christian. Great. Thanks to both of you. We have some time for questions now, and I'm hoping that you will enter your questions into the chat or into the question and answer box. While folks are gathering their thoughts, maybe Christian or Kristīne, do you have questions for each other? I don't want to put you on the spot, but maybe you had something on your mind that you wanted to ask the other.
I have a question for Kristīne, which I always find interesting. Is there anything I like failures because it's a great way to learn things. Is there anything in your path of work that when you look back at it, you will have done differently?
I can't say that I would do differently. I think the first year was a struggle for me when I started to deal and understand the whole concept of impact assessment and what it is and what does it mean. I think I was struggling. The first year I was struggling until I found the theory of change and learned about the logic model and understood how to make logic out of it. But other than that, there would be one thing I think that maybe I would not do differently, but I would put more effort into it, is that because, well, impact evaluation studies, also like yours, Christian, they are not cheap. They are quite expensive studies, and a lot of money spent to come up with the results. And I think in Latvia, when we had the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation's project for development of public libraries, we did a lot of research for many years and repetitive, but we could have used some of the findings more than we did. So that would be one thing that I would put more effort into, making these findings work for advocacy better than we had capacity for that, or understanding at that time back. So, Christian, I think I have a question for you, because I was also thinking, and I think it's a great study and a great. So the most valuable, like, practical thing for me is the instruments and the method that you used, because you were talking about, and this is all about public libraries. How do you feel this method could be applied in other types of libraries, like academic libraries, like university libraries, for example, or special libraries, which are different?
I think that's a great question, and I talked about it before. And I think special libraries, educational libraries, academic libraries struggles a little bit with the same problem about tracking impact. I used to be in academic libraries for many years, and what really counted was the amount of money we used on electronic resources and the downloads that we got, and then a little bit about foot traffic. And research support, but only in numbers. How many research support situation did we have on a year? And to put it in some way, and so if you want to look at, I mean, always thought that the library as a space is really interesting. Also, especially maybe in academic context, why do they come? I mean, it's not because of the books in many academic libraries, because so much context is online. I just go into an academic library and I just see reading halls filled with students. Why on earth don't they sit at home? And I think there's many good reasons for that. I think something about that it stimulates identity of being in an academic institution. I also think there's something practical about it, because at home there is dishwashers, or maybe you rather want to clean your house than read about Foucault or something like that. But we don't know it. I mean, so I think, and we don't talk about it, at least not in Denmark. So I think easily that the method could be applied to academic library and special library context, and I feel it would be relevant for them. In Denmark, they are not very much debated. It's kind of closed circle within the academic community or the mother institution, but they're not that debated in the larger scale as public libraries. But that doesn't mean that stakeholders of special libraries and academic libraries are not interested in debating the actual value of the things that the library provides into education, into learning, into research. So I thought it would be, and I think we made the design pretty open to be adapted into different situations. We're also hoping that different kind of museums and other institutions of culture would take it on, because in Denmark in general, when we talk about culture, not only public libraries, how many tickets does the movie and the concert sell, otherwise it's an expert saying this is a good movie and this is a bad movie, or this is a good painting and this is a bad painting, good book, bad book. But we don't know anything how it affects us as individuals. So I think it could be adapted, and also to special libraries and academic libraries.
Thank you both. A couple of questions here for both of you. So does the work that you do include building capacity among library staff to learn how to evaluate library activities to demonstrate outcomes and impact?
Yes.
Kristīne?
Well, yes, answer is yes.
we have used it. We have used this on the method as a bit. Me talking about this on a general level might not, affect that many librarians go home and do the same. It takes something else. So for grounding this, we have been doing a amount of national workshops online for library people all over Denmark. Not this kind of talk where I talk about the aim and the method in overall and the findings, but actually how to use it. How do you take this method? How do you take the impact compass and use it on your own library, on your own citizens, on your own community? So, and that is where it gets really interesting, because that is the situation where it's going to be used in different contexts, and where we made a share, brainchild around the impact and of public libraries in Denmark. So we have been using a huge amount of resources and energy of getting it out there.
Right. Well, at IFLA, as I said, I work with storytelling, and we built up like a structure or the requirement what we want to have in our SDG stories. And because it's so much related to big societal programs which are covered by Sustainable Development Goals. So in my daily life, we provide the coaching, we provide also organized trainings on not only how to measure impact, but what the impact means, and how to connect it to the community need and the big national or regional problem and things like that. So if you're interested in trainings, please just contact me by email, and we have resources ranging from understanding community needs, ending with outcomes measurement.
Great. Kristīne, a question for you. What are your reflections on the importance of understanding your organization's business processes and systems?
That's a very good question, because I was also thinking about, because for me everything is about the community. And as I was talking about understanding what the stakeholders understand is meaningful and what the value is for stakeholders, I think the first thing is to actually understand how the whole organization is functioning, because the community, for example, in special libraries would be different. So of course there is a value that a special library would bring to the whole bigger area and the society in general, but the main community is institutional. So, and for that, the first thing is to actually understand how the institution works, what is important for the institution, what are the goals for the institution, because the special library would be one who would then support that. So I would say it's just about defining what the community is, and really starting that conversation, and really understanding the context, and then finding what is that value that library is bringing to the big goals of the organization. Like, for example, we have a story on the map also, which comes from one of the special libraries, which is focused on, well, special libraries. It is in the institute, and one of the institute's goals was to increase the intellectual output, like the number of articles by the institute researchers. And then the library did evaluation and were like proving through the study how they contributed to that. So it's understanding what's the goal and what's the value for the institution. I say that's essential.
And we have one last question for you, Kristíne. There have been many attempts to change the narrative around public libraries in the UK, and it always seems to come back to a focus on borrowing books. What do you think we should do in library schools to help change this narrative through our curriculum?
That's an easy question. I think libraries should be discussed in the context of the community they serve. Libraries with books are not a goal in themselves. They are a mean to something bigger. They are here to make the world a better place. and to make communities stronger. I think that is really important, but it's kind of hard to talk about. And to many people, including decision makers and media, libraries are buildings with books. And so they are, but that's not the point, and that's not the way we should talk about it. I mean, books are important, but they are not books for themselves. They are books for something else. So I think our best shot is to talk about communities, not libraries in themselves, but how the obstacles and the opportunities in communities, and how the libraries either are being an answer to some of those problems with, free and equal access to trustful resources, books, electronic journals, and so on, free spaces, shared spaces, access for everybody, for help, for guidance from staff, programs, and so on, or how the library, public or academic, I mean, it's the same story within academic and special libraries. It's about learning, it's about education, it's about research. How does the library fix some of the problems within that, or making it stronger? It's not about the, per se, the books or the electronic resources. It's how that are been talking into something bigger. And if we can, I think if we don't talk about that, then we will never fix this, I'm sure, sadly. But even if it does, I think there's still a long way. But the more people within and outside of libraries that are focusing on, this is not only about libraries, this is about something bigger than libraries, and how libraries are talking into that, then hopefully someday we can cross the bridge and be in another place where we talk about libraries as in communities as they deserve it.
Thank you so much. That's all the time that we have for today, unfortunately. A really big thank you to Christian and Kristīne for speaking with us this evening, or this morning, wherever you are, on this very rich and insightful and important topic. Thank you so much to our audience for joining us today, and we hope to see you at our next SLA Europe event. Thank you.
Bye.